Today, we're diving deep into the hidden world of drug interactions. You see, every single thing you take, whether it's a prescription, a supplement, or even just your lunch, kicks off this whole cascade of chemical reactions in your body. From a toxicologist's point of view, these aren't just little side effects. They're the core mechanics of how chemicals in our bodies get along or don't. And understanding this is absolutely crucial.
So let's start with a number. 82%. What is that? Well, that's the probability of having at least one drug-drug interaction if you're taking 7 or more medications. That's a huge number. This situation, called polypharmacy, is getting more and more common. But the idea of an interaction is actually way bigger than just one pill messing with another.
So what do we really mean by drug interaction? The clinical definition is any change to a drug's effect that's caused by something else. And that something else isn't just another prescription. It could be an herbal supplement, the food you eat, or even how your own body is functioning because of a pre-existing disease. To really get a grip on all this complexity, we need a model, a simple way to think about where these things happen. And luckily, that framework is surprisingly straightforward. Almost every single drug interaction happens on one of two battlegrounds. We call them pharmacodynamics and pharmacokinetics. The easiest way to remember this is pharmacodynamics is what the drug does to your body. It's the action at the target site, like a receptor. Pharmacokinetics, on the other hand, is what your body does to the drug. It's the entire journey from when you take it to when it leaves your system. So let's jump into that first battleground. All right, so pharmacodynamics. These interactions happen when two different things show up at the same place to do a job. Think of a specific receptor or an enzyme. Because we're talking about a drug's main purpose, its intended effect, these are often the interactions we can predict most easily. We can even describe these effects with some really simple math. You have an additive effect, which is a basic 1 + 1 = 2. Then there's synergy, where 1 + 1 equals something way bigger than 2, like mixing alcohol with a sedative. And of course, you can have antagonism, where one drug basically cancels out the other, so 1 + 1 equals less than 2. And make no mistake, these effects can have incredibly high stakes. We're talking life or death. For instance, you combine an MAOI antidepressant with cocaine, you're risking a hypertensive crisis and serotonin syndrome. Or mixing certain antibiotics with specific antipsychotics, that can mess with the heart's rhythm, prolonging something called the QT interval, and leading to a potentially fatal arrhythmia. This is pharmacodynamics in action, and the consequences can be severe. Now for our second battleground, pharmacokinetics. So if pharmacodynamics was about what the drug does to the body, pharmacokinetics is the reverse. It's all about what the body does to the drug. And this is where things get really interesting, because your body's own processes can completely change how much of a drug is active, and therefore how well it works or how toxic it becomes. Every drug goes on a journey, and we use the acronym ADME to describe it. First is absorption into your system, then distribution throughout your body. After that comes metabolism, which is where it gets broken down, and finally excretion, where it leaves your body. Now, an interaction can pop up at any of these 4 stages, but one of them is famous for being the most troublesome. And that stage is metabolism. As the source material puts it, this is where the most common and seriously harmful interactions happen. And it makes sense, right? If a drug isn't absorbed well, it just might not work. But if it isn't metabolized correctly, it can build up and up and up to toxic levels. This exact problem has actually forced a number of drugs right off the market. So who are the stars of this metabolic show? They're a family of liver enzymes called the cytochrome P450 system, or CYP enzymes for short. You can think of them as the body's main chemical processing plant. And that means anything that messes with these enzymes can create a massive domino effect, changing the levels of tons of other drugs. This table is basically a toxicologist cheat sheet for these CYP enzymes. For any given enzyme, say CYP3A4, you have a few key players. You've got a substrate, that's the drug being broken down. Then you have an inhibitor, which blocks the enzyme from doing its job. And you also have an inducer, which actually speeds the enzyme up. So in this classic case, if a patient is taking terfenadine, the substrate, and they also take erythromycin, which is an inhibitor, that whole metabolic process gets shut down.
So what happens when that enzyme is blocked? Well, the substrate drug, the one that's supposed to be getting processed, just isn't. Its concentration in the blood just keeps rising and rising, potentially hitting toxic levels from what should have been a perfectly safe dose. And the data on this is just staggering. Take a look. The normal concentration of a drug like midazolam is pretty low. But if you take it at the same time as ketoconazole, a really potent CYP enzyme inhibitor, the midazolam level just shoots through the roof. Its metabolism has been slammed to a halt, and you get a dangerously high, potentially toxic concentration from a totally standard dose.
And it's not just metabolism either. Kinetic interactions can happen with absorption too, and this one is wild. The antifungal drug itraconazole needs an acidic environment to be absorbed properly. In one study, they found that taking it with an acidic drink like Coca-Cola nearly doubled the peak amount of drug in the bloodstream. It's a perfect example of how everyday things, like a soda, can completely change a drug's journey.
Okay, so we've been talking a lot about the dangers, the hazards. But all this deep knowledge about interactions, it's not just for avoiding problems. We can actually flip the script and use it to create harmony, to design smarter, better, more effective treatments. Let me show you what I mean. Look at these combinations that were designed on purpose to be beneficial. L-DOPA for Parkinson's is given with carbidopa, a drug specifically designed to inhibit L-DOPA's breakdown before it gets to the brain. That's a pharmacokinetic interaction used for good. Or amoxicillin being paired with clavulanic acid to protect it from being destroyed by bacteria. It's like toxicology in reverse. We're intentionally creating interactions to get a better outcome. And this really brings us full circle. Because these interactions, they aren't happening in some far-off laboratory. They happen every single day to all of us. Your morning coffee, the food you eat with a pill, that herbal tea you like, an evening glass of wine. All of them contain chemicals that step right into this incredibly complex dance of pharmacokinetics and pharmacodynamics, which really leaves us with one final thought. We've seen how prescription drugs, foods, and herbs can all interact. The source material even points out that things like your stress level can change your body's chemistry. So the real question to ponder is this: what hidden interactions, both big and small, could be shaping how your body works right now, every single day?